Alright, so before we get started, I do want to address one thing first. His rims. Yes, I did paint them silver, and yes, it's not the greatest. Alright, so as always, let's do a little toy retrospective on our Minibot friend here. Hopefully this shouldn't take too long, because by the time this toy came out, he only had 2 others before this one, and well, 3 if you count the encore release of the G1 toy. But really, why would you? First off, we have the original G1 toy from 1986, which is just a Gears remold with a new face, new chest, new legs. And then he turned into some sort of nondescript four-wheel drive off-road truck type deal. And then it was, like I said before, it was reissued in 2008 with some better paint, and it was put into a multi-pack that somehow forgot the S, so he was just Swerve. His next toy was an Alternator in 2004, which I personally find very strange. First off, he's a remold of Alternator's tracks, so his alt mode is just like Road Rager's alt mode. Secondly, his robot mode is primarily red, black, and gold instead of red, white, and silver, so it ends up looking more like a hot rod than a Swerve, especially when you bring out the arm cannons and realize he has similar shoulders to Energon Rodimus. Alright, so with that, we are brought to mid-2012 with the release of this toy, which is when Hasbro Asia just had to take some of the molds from the previous couple years, repaint them, give them new heads, and sell them in Asian countries like China, Singapore, and the Philippines. And not Japan like I originally thought. My bad. And of course, Hasbro America got in on the action and sold the entire lot as Toys R Us exclusives that were strangely packed in vehicle mode and had multilingual packaging, which the Asian releases had neither of. So Swerve here is a repaint of Generation Sergeant Cup in this beautiful glossy red and fantastically accented by the monochrome trio of white, black, and gray. He comes in at about 4.3 centimeters, which is about 5.6 inches. And here he is with Siege Optimus, Titan's Return Chrome Dome, my last review, Studio Series Brawl, and his fellow 86 Minibot, Power of the Prime's Outback. And his proportions are pretty much perfect. Nothing about him really screams flawed right off the bat. Well, maybe one thing. Now, these hips are pretty basic rectangles of gray plastic complete with universal hips and a very clean thigh swivel. The knees themselves are pretty nice as well, with these bright white rectangular triangular shins. The joints themselves are pretty good, although they have more articulation going the wrong way. Continuing downward, the ankles are where it gets a bit faulty. Now, because of how the legs transform, the insides are pretty hollow. I mean, not enough that you can kind of see through them, like translucent almost, like a knockoff would be, but it's pretty empty in there. Now, what you can see through are the ankle joints. It's fine. I mean, this one looks like it got shot. But articulation-wise, the ankles themselves have tilt in all 4 basic directions. His feet are actually pretty long and sturdy, so he really isn't going anywhere. Since we've hit the bottom, there's nowhere left to go but up, so let's take it from the top. So, looking at this head, it's actually pretty interesting. It's got similarities to the OG one, but they're a lot more subtle. Like, he has like the faux hawk here, but it's a lot more toned down and built into the head. And then he also has like the cheek sections inside, but they're like, they come out and then they're pushed back in, so he's got like little like cheek spikes, which almost seem like a softer version of a Bayverse design. And the face itself is probably the biggest difference. Now, one of the first things you'll notice is the lack of an actual visor. Instead, he has just 2 bright blue eyes, which work really well because it pops against the shining silver of the rest of the face and very much against the bright ruby red. The other weird thing is that he has a very stern demeanor, not like the usual interpretation of Swerve being very cheery. It's kind of the opposite. And also, that chin can go on for days. And all in all, it's a pretty strange in the design choice department, but I don't hate it. This torso is quite an interesting chunk of plastic parts. He has this big chunk right down the middle, It starts with your classic red auto badge on top of this stripe of silver, and then continues down. So he has an almost 10 pack, very G1 Galvatron styles. The sides themselves are pretty cool, because it's clear that there's a headlight sections of the car, but the way they kind of contort into the body makes them look more like some sort of coat or vest, or maybe backpack straps, which I like that idea a lot more, because he does in fact have a backpack, but it's not bad. Definitely seen worse. And I mean, considering it's pretty much a good chunk of the front of the car, it's pretty clean and compact. I mean, he's got the 3mm clips on top, so you can store his weapon up there. This, if you want some older over-the-shoulder action, or just fold it down for some more traditional stylings. You can also store the weapon inside the backpack, but it just kind of sits there. So if you tip him upside down, it can get caught and stay in there, but usually it'll just fall out pretty easily. Now, speaking of the gun, let's talk about that real quick. The gun here is your pretty standard kind of space musket. It's a pretty good design. My only real issue with it is that the peg isn't a 5mm port, but this also means that Swerve himself can't hold any other weapons because his hands are too small, so you risk breaking them. Let's look at these arms, because they're essentially just a series of joints connected by whatever excess plastic they had available, and then hidden by car doors. Seriously, these things are kind of nuts. They've got a double hinge in the shoulder joint, plus a rotation in there as well. You've got a bicep rotation, 9-degree elbow in either direction, 9-degree inward bend, which doesn't look that bad. Wrist rotation, kind of. It gets a bit hindered by the doors, but it's there. And the doors themselves have a hinge as well, so you can kind of position them however you like. That's not even mentioning the wheel assembly on the back, which is just kind of a strut with the wheel attached to it. But this allows you to position the wheel in a myriad of different ways. Personally, I like the on the shoulders extra shoulder pad look, but you can go down to the sides of the arm for a more traditional looking G1 Swerve look, if that's your style. With the robot mode all done, let's get trucking. Transformation isn't too bad, but it gets a bit fiddly when it comes to the front of the car. Like, the steps involved with the transformation are pretty neat, like the 180 torso flip to get the grill in the front and then move all this stuff to the back is pretty ingenious. The problem really lies with these headlight sections and lining the doors up. Now, the headlight sections are a problem for one specific reason: springs. Someone decided it would be a good idea if they put the struts connecting to these sections on springs, like a sort of automorph gimmick when you go into robot mode. But like most automorph gimmicks, it really only works one way. But if you go slow enough, you shouldn't have that big a problem with it. Now, once you have done the transformation, though, holy hell, is this not one of the cleanest alt modes I've ever seen from a retail figure, especially in the Generation storyline. Now, this alt mode is some sort of retro-style truck, sort of like a knockoff Honda Ridgeline. All sleek curves and soft angles, cast in the glorious ruby red, and this time mainly accented by black, with some silver trim and a white bed. And that being said, though, I don't know if Swerve really knows the meaning of the word disguise, considering the big Autobot symbol on his roof, especially since most of his opposite faction are flyers. You could see that. Now, feature-wise, he does roll pretty well, and he's one of the few Transformers to have a working tailgate, which is pretty neat. And as for weapon storage, he does still have the clips from robot mode, so you can take the rifle and store it on top for some kind of more military action if that's your jam. Or you could come underneath it, feed the barrel through the old ankle bullet hole, and plug the stock into this peg here on what was the back of the waist. Plug it in, and now you have a second tailpipe. That is one of the most ingenious ways of weapon storage I've ever seen. Like, it's on the same level as Studio Series Sideswipe and Last Night Cogman. Now, size-wise, he's just under 14 centimeters long, which is about 5.5 inches. And here he is with Optimus, Chrome Dome, Brawl, and Outback, just for some quick size comparisons in vehicle mode. Honestly, I think that's about it for GDO Swerve. It's a wonderful update to a not-so-classic minibot. Anyways, where does Swerve rank out of the 3 figures I have already reviewed? Well, it's clear he's better than Brawl. No question there. But is he better than Power the Prime's Battle Trap? This was a tough decision for me for a little bit, but I'm going to go with no. He gets second place, which is still very good, though. Now, let's see who's next. Spin, 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 spin. Who is it? Is that... Ooh, yes, yes, yes. Yeah. Looks like we're doing Earthrise / Siege Astro Train. So, yeah, with that, that's the end of it. So, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, follow me on Twitter, at Mythic_Gears. Maybe join the Discord that's linked down below if you want to talk TFs with myself and a bunch of other people. Later.